Thank you for joining us. The conclusions have been adopted and we will publish them shortly, like we did yesterday. President of the European Council, please.
Merci beaucoup. Nous venons de clôturer la réunion du Conseil européen. Vous savez, hier soir avant minuit, nous avons pu valider des points importants qui touchent au soutien à l'Ukraine, le soutien financier pour l'Ukraine, le soutien politique pour l'Ukraine. Nous avons également pu prendre des décisions en termes de sanctions qui représentent un pas en avant extrêmement important pour faire davantage de pression sur le Kremlin afin d'encourager tous les efforts.
We indeed want to encourage every effort and take every measure to bring this war to an end. As regards the key points we covered today, the food security was a particularly important point. We invited President Macky Sall, who is the President of the African Union currently, to discuss with African representatives how the European Union and the African Union could cooperate as effectively as possible to meet this challenge that we jointly face, to take measures to support the African countries in a spirit of partnership to help improve and strengthen the production capacities in Africa, and also to ensure supporting measures so that one can help avert this potentially serious crisis for a number of countries. It could have a harmful effect in Africa, but also in Europe. That's one element, and you'll see the detailed conclusions on that.
Today is the energy, and we all know this is a fundamental challenge for all of us. It's just extremely important on the one hand to discuss on the proposals put on the table by the Commission in order to prepare the following steps. We Power EU is a very important initiative. We had the occasion to exchange views and to make progress on that topic, and especially we understand this is extremely important to work on the possibility and to explore the possibility of import price caps also with international partners. We intend also to act in 4 key areas: the diversify fuels and sources, in the renewables, to speed up renewables is of course fundamental, but also to work in the field of energy efficiency. To save energy is, of course, a fundamental priority for all of us. And we are also determined to invest in infrastructure, in energy interconnections, and, of course, in renewable. We need also to improve our preparedness for possible major supply disruptions. And we have also asked the Commission to work on the optimization of the functioning of the European electricity market. Ce débat sur l'énergie.
This debate on energy was an opportunity to reaffirm our determination to pick up this challenge as Europeans. Now, we faced this challenge before the war in Ukraine, but even more so now because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. And then finally, the third point I wanted to mention concerning European defence. You will see the conclusions too in this field. We share the view around the table that we need to spend and invest more on defence, and to do so not just more but also better, to act more effectively, better together as Europeans, involving, for example, grouped procurement, and also our serious effort to strengthen Europe's industrial base in this field, taking account in particular of the role of European SMEs, which can play a key role in this process. It was also an opportunity to reaffirm the importance of complementarity between what the EU does and what NATO does. There will be a summit in Madrid, and this will no doubt be an opportunity to reaffirm this complementarity between the European Union and NATO. So these are some of the key points I wanted to share with you in the immediate aftermath of the European Council, which has just concluded. Madam President.
You might remember that in Versailles, the leaders decided to phase out the dependency on Russian fossil fuels as soon as possible. We started with coal. Yesterday, in the middle of the night, we decided then to have a ban now on de facto 90% of Russian oil imports to the European Union by the end of the year. And this comes at a time when we see that Russia has disrupted supplies to, by now, 5 member states. Finland, Bulgaria, and Poland, but now to a company in the Netherlands and to a company in Denmark. So our answer has to be very clear. How are we going to manage and what is the roadmap to really get rid of the dependency of Russian fossil fuels, and here with view to gas? The answer is Repower EU. It brings basically 3 different pillars that we have discussed today. The first one is the diversification away from Russian fossil fuels, specifically on gas. Here we now have set up a joint task force for common purchases, joint purchases of gas, because the market power of the whole of 27 in the European Union is much bigger than every single member state, and we will achieve better conditions. We have, of course, already since the beginning of the year started to look out for other, more reliable suppliers, and this effort is already paying off. We see today that the LNG deliveries from other parts of the world, others than Russia, have doubled in Q1 in 2022 compared, for example, to the previous year. The second element we are working on in Repower EU is the security of supply through better interconnections, so that the gas can flow wherever it is needed. And of course, the common objective to have a more strategic storage gas storage across the European Union. Here we have good news. Our gas storage is already filled at 41% of the capacity. This is 5 percentage points higher than it was the case last year at the same date. And then the third is the most important pillar, and this is the massive investment in renewables. It's accelerating the deployment of renewables across the European Union. The renewable energy has the big advantage that it is not only good for the climate, but it is also good for our independence and good for our security of supply, and it creates jobs at home. So for this plan, Repower EU, we have been discussing with the Council, European Council. We are proposing to support it with 300 billion euros from EU funding. There are different parts that are contributing to this funding. If there are any questions about it, I'm very happy to respond to them. But this is the house of Repower EU that we have presented and discussed today. Basically, it is solidarity and cooperation that are at the heart of any successful strategy to deal with Russia as a non-reliable supplier anymore. Cooperation, for example, as has been demonstrated by Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium, who a couple of days ago showed at a joint wind summit what it means to develop the wind power, the offshore wind power in the North Sea. And of course, solidarity, this was a big topic today, ensuring that in case of a full disruption of gas flows from Russia, gas is indeed allowed to flow to wherever it is needed in Europe. The second topic was defense. The war, again, was and is a stark reminder for our member states on the need to strengthen our defense capacities. We have seen positive developments, notably, of course, we are all aware of Finland's and Sweden's application to join NATO, the strongest military alliance in the world, and they will benefit greatly from their membership. But also the fact that since the beginning of the war, leaders and the member states stepped up and announced by now 200 billion euros in extra military spending. Now it is important that we ensure that these stepping up and additional investment, we get the maximum value out of it. And we all know the challenges that exist within the European Union or the European model. On one hand, it is the lack of investment over the last years, so the gaps have to be filled. But the bigger challenge is the fragmentation we have within the European defence industry and the duplication of weapon systems. Here we see that this leads to increased cost, to reduced interoperability, so we have to improve this situation. And therefore, it is first of all helpful that since the beginning of this mandate, the European Defence Fund is up and running. It's a strong incentive to work together. The pilot programs so far have benefited to more than 600 entities, and 26 member states have used so far the European Defence Fund. This is an encouraging start. But there's also a second element now when we replenish the military material that has been sent to Ukraine, for example. It is important that this is coordinated, and for that we're setting up a task force to coordinate, also to deconflict the replenishment of the national stockpiles. And the Commission will propose before end of June to mobilise 500 million euros over the next 2 years from the EU budget to incentivise the joint procurement by at least 3 member states. This is, let's say, a pilot for a longer-term proposal that will come in the course of this year for a European Defence Investment Programme. Finally, the third topic was on food security. Charles introduced in the whole topic already. At the moment being, we're facing one overriding urgency, and that is 20 million tons of wheat are stuck in Ukraine, and they have to get out. And therefore, we have created, and we're working hard on the solidarity lanes that will enable it to bring out parts of this wheat through a land route and trains towards our parts. It is not trivial, and it is, of course, more tedious and expensive, but it is necessary to get this wheat out. The second point that is important, that we now give relief to the vulnerable populations and the possibility to afford the food. For that, we have pledged 2.5 billion euros. And we propose to mobilize reserves from the European Development Fund to support, for example, sub-Saharan Africa. The third element in that is that we step up our own food production. We expect a record export of cereals of 40 million tons in 22 and 23. And within this scenario, we call on all partners not to restrict global trade on agricultural products. So any kind of trade restrictions have absolutely no place in our member states or globally. And finally, but this is the mid and long term, we really have to develop better strategies, for example, in North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, to increase the production and the resilience with new technologies, precision farming, the nanotechnologies that are out there. So a lot of topics that are combined to this food topic, from the urgency to the mid and to the long term. We will coordinate all our actions with the Team Europe approach to feed into this work. I will travel to Cairo mid-June to discuss all these issues with President al-Sisi, because we have to look at them not only from a European Ukraine perspective, but also from a regional and bilateral perspective. Many thanks.
Thank you, Madam President. Anne Revant, je t'invite. Tu voulais prendre la parole? OK. Tomasz, you were next. Désolé, Anne, je pensais que tu voulais prendre la parole.
It's Tomasz Bielecki, Gazeta Wyborcza and Deutsche Welle. I have a question for both presidents of wheat export from Ukraine. Do you see any chances that all these solidarity lines and calls for the EU member states for help in the export could add up to the capacity sufficient for exporting Ukrainian wheat this year, this summer? If not, because it seems for now it's too little, what would be your comment on these ideas of transporting the wheat through Belarus on the price of it through Belarus to Baltic states? And if not, do you see any diplomatic possibility to convince or to make Russians to unblock Odessa port to export the wheat? Thank you.
No, you are absolutely right. It should be the first priority because there are 22 million tons of grains that are blocked in Ukraine, especially in Odessa. And a few weeks ago when I went to Odessa, I had the occasion to see with my own eyes what's the situation on the ground. And for instance, countries like Egypt and other countries in Africa, they are victims of this situation. It means that we fully support all the efforts made by the United Nations in order to find an agreement to open a maritime corridor to the Black Sea. It would be the best option in order to make sure it is possible to export grains. But we are not certain it will work. We hope it will be possible to get an agreement on that important topic, and that's why we are also working, based on the proposal of the Commission, on those green lanes in order to facilitate alternative routes. And with the leaders today and yesterday, we discussed the different possibilities in order to develop alternative routes. But we know that it's more difficult, it's more expensive, it's more difficult for obvious logistic reasons. And we try to facilitate in order to reduce the administrative burdens, which is also an important question. About Belarus and the access towards the Baltic Sea, we understand that there were also talks at the level of the United Nations on that topic, and we support all these efforts. But in the short term, we don't see a concrete result, a concrete achievement. And you know that we have decided sanctions on Belarus, on the potash and the fertilizers, for instance, and we think it's very important to maintain the pressure against the Kremlin, but also against Belarus, because we feel that this country is helping a lot Russia in the framework of this war launched by Russia against Ukraine.
Yeah. Only little to add. Charles described indeed our efforts, or the international efforts in the Black Sea. It is important not to underestimate the work we can do now, and we are doing now. Indeed, these 20 million tons are there. On average, Ukraine exported in normal times 5 million tons per month. Now we are at least at a range between 200,000 and 1 million ton per month with these measures of the green lanes, for example. Very tedious, very difficult, lots of effort, but it's something you can do right now, and we are doing right now, while the other efforts for the bigger picture, of course, are still ongoing.
Yuri, you are next.
Yes, thank you very much, Yuri Shiko, Ukrainian service of Deutsche Welle. I have a question first about the embargo on oil. It, of course, is great that the EU reached this deal, but if you look at the message it sends to Russia, it looks like it says to Russia that Russia has still time, 6-8 more months, to continue destroying Ukraine till the embargo enters into force. And it says like Russia has all this time in order to find other buyers for this oil. So my question is, which message do you see it sends to Russia, and how it helps to stop war now? And the second question is also, because you discussed today a lot of energy, what do you see? Ukraine is connected to European continental electricity grid already for a couple of months, and I know that the work is going on the commercial of selling of Ukrainian electricity to the EU countries. So which perspective do you see? I think it's rather to Frau von der Leyen question. Which perspective do you see here? How soon it might start, this commercial trade of electricity with Ukraine, and how can it help also Europe in its energy transition? Thank you very much.
I think it was an outstanding success that we were able to connect the electricity grid that fast. You must know that in February, beginning of March, there was a planned decoupling of the Ukrainian electricity grid from the Russian electricity grid, with initially the plan to recouple again and take 2 years to then join the European Union. Of course, when the war hit, it was absolutely impossible to recouple Ukraine to the Russian grid, and we managed within 2 weeks to couple the Ukrainian grid to the European one, and this was and is a big success. And therefore, I think it also shows that we have ongoing work during the war that always improves and supports the situation of Ukraine. So it's very important not only to stare at the war, which is atrocious and horrible, but to never give up on doing the daily work to improve the situation of Ukraine itself. For your wider question, I think we have to look at 2 points. It is a wind-down period in 6 to 8 months till the end of the year. So it's not an abrupt and full speed supply during that time and then abrupt end, but a clear reduction of oil already. One figure I have on the top of my head is, for example, Germany told us that since the beginning of the year, where they started with 35% Russian oil, they are already down to 12% Russian oil. This shows that by just working hard on not renewing contracts, finishing contracts, and looking at other suppliers, you can fill this wind-down period much better. And most importantly, in the back is, of course, the whole big package of 6 sanctions. And these sanctions are biting hard and are really destroying, and that's the goal, the basis, the financial basis of Putin leading this war, and hitting hard the Russian economy.
I would like to also say a few words about that important question, because I think that when we were in Versailles a few weeks ago, not many observers would have thought that it would have been possible for us only in a few weeks to take such a concrete and a strong decision. We have decided to sanction Russia by banning Russian oil. This is extremely important. And we will succeed in the following months to implement that decision. And Ursula is right when she said that it will break the financing of the Russian war machine. This is our goal. And we have 2 tools that we are using as much as we can. On the one hand, we support Ukraine with military equipment, with financial support, with material, with political support as much as we can. Also when we engage with third countries in order to have more support at the international level, point 1. And point 2, we have decided on 5 packages of sanctions. And the last one was that we have decided yesterday was more difficult, because this is about energy. And energy is a big topic, it's a big thing for the member states, for the households, for the families, for the businesses. And that's why we have decided to work on solutions, on concrete solutions, in order to make sure that the decisions we are taking are painful for Russia, for the Kremlin. This is our main goal.
Dernière question. Philippe. Il faudra passer par ici.
Pardon, c'est tout un voyage. Merci.
Sorry, a bit of a trip to get here from Le Soir. Question for both of you. Do you share the view of certain member states that with this 6th package, it's time to take a break when it comes to the sanctions, to look at what the effects of these sanctions are, because it's also got a price tag? Or do you think, as others believe, that it's now time to prepare the way for the 7th package? Now, you said yesterday that Coreper on Wednesday would probably complete all the work, so the 6th package could enter into force already on Wednesday or Thursday. Can you confirm that date? The second question is with regard to food security. Moscow keeps repeating that the cause of all this evil is, of course, the Western sanctions, the fact that we're not letting their vessels into our ports, and also what's happening around Odessa. Do you think that that is a massive trap? they want to demine Odessa so that they can then get access themselves to the port. Well, on that last question on Odessa, of course, there has to be a security guarantee there. We can't have a maritime corridor for humanitarian reasons, weakening the security situation in Ukraine. Obviously, we would support the position of Ukraine each and every time they try to defend their legitimate security concerns. And secondly, yesterday we had a debate which had been prepared in the run-up to that for the sixth package of sanctions, and we are now focusing on the implementation of the sixth package. Now, that doesn't mean that there are opinions out there. Different members of the Council have different opinions, but we are focusing now on the sixth package. And as I indicated yesterday, the legal texts are being drafted, and the procedure therefore can take off as of tomorrow. So the text will be sent tomorrow and validated tomorrow evening or the day after. So it could just be a question of hours with the legal drafting of the text. But I can confirm that as of tomorrow, the legal text will be there and can be addressed to all the Coreper members.
The question is concerned on sixth package and the follow-up. I think, on one hand, we have to look at the Russian economy and financial market, and on the other hand, on the big resources to the Russian government, that is energy, fossil fuel energy. And we have now clearly addressed the three topics of coal, oil, and gas with two sanction packages and Repower EU. And the six sanction packages are also, of course, addressing the financial sector and hurting it heavily. The same goes for the Russian economy. And for me, it is important now, after having put in place the structure on the energy element, that we look in the financial and the economic sector of Russia, whether there are attempts of circumventions now, or trying to move away from this situation. And therefore, I would not exclude that we over and over will have to readdress the situation, that we close loopholes, that we stop circumventions, so that we keep on working on that. But the big bulk on energy, this is up and running, this is on the road in what we've just described. On the looming food crisis, that the fact that there is a severe food crisis developing is only the fault of Russia's unjustified war. Without this war, we would not have it. And we should always, over and over, repeat that. Russia is not only blocking the export of Ukrainian wheat, it is bombarding warehouses where wheat is stored deliberately. Of course, you know that they are also mining the fields where Ukraine could have the next harvest of corn. And I want to be very clear. We have no sanctions on food and agricultural products. No sanctions on that. And important also, if you are speaking about fertilizers, for example, third countries have access to all the fertilizers, for example, from Russia. This was a clear decision that we say humanitarian goods and food, agriculture, wheat, of course, is a part of it, no sanctions on it. So it's a complete misinformation from Russia's side. The only reason why we are struggling now with the food crisis is because of this brutal, unjustified war against Ukraine.
Thank you, Madam President. This concludes our press conference. It's a matter of minutes for the publication of the conclusions. I'm sorry, can't hear you.